Hey y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures. And it's time for the top 10 Marvel Legends of the year. But remember, this is my list, so it's really going to be based off of figures that I have the most emotional connection to, or ones that I think fill in the gaps of my collection. Now, you may not completely agree with my choices, but I promise, by the end of the video, you'll understand why I picked the ones that I picked. Oh, and one other thing. No Spidey's in this list. He gets his own top 10, and I'll have a link to that at the end of the video. So let's get started looking at the top 10 Marvel Legends of 2024. Even the most die-hard mutant maniac couldn't have predicted the overwhelming response to the X-Men 97 cartoon. In addition to being a critical darling with new and old fans alike, it led to 2 series of incredible action figures with a 3rd series in the works. The figures sold out everywhere, and in an almost unprecedented move, Gambit and Rogue have been re-released as retailer exclusives. And it could certainly be argued that this Wolverine could be at the top of the list. But I'm going in a different direction with Executioner. First appearing in Uncanny X-Men Annual 17 from 1993, Executioner used stolen Sentinel and alien tech to hunt down and kill mutants. This was mirrored in the cartoon, as he led the Mutant Liberation Front's attack on Magneto during his United Nations trial, one that led to Storm losing her powers. I really love it when an action figure surprises me, and that was definitely the case with Executioner here. You know, you could look at those first 2 waves of X-Men 97 figures, and you could see that the Rogue, the Wolverine, that Gambit were going to be hits. But when you got them in hand, you realize, man, this is actually a really special figure. I love the way that this robe flows across his shoulder. I like all the cartoon accurate details down to the Friends of Humanity belt buckle, and I particularly like this mask on this ball joint here. It really allows you to get into a lot of positions, particularly some looking down type positions that really bring that evil presence, because let's face it, the Friends of Humanity are a cult, and this mask with the hood really brings out that cult-like quality to what's going on. He came with a ton of cool accessories, including both of his shafts and the gun that took the powers away from Storm. And I love it when you can store all of the accessories with the figure. It just keeps them from getting lost. Overall, this was a shockingly good figure. He really does have good articulation and bend despite all of these overlays. The soft rubbery plastic still allows you to get him into some great poses. And this one was a surprise. And sometimes surprises are good. And in this case, it landed this figure in the top 10 of our list. Coming in at the number 9 spot is the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Death's Head. Death's Head is the perfect character for a convention exclusive. A unique oddball character that is interesting enough to be highly desirable, but isn't necessarily crucial to anyone's collection. Add to that a spectacular retro package replicating the beloved Series 2 of the Marvel trading cards, and this is a guaranteed winner. I never owned a comic with Death's Head in it. I'm not even sure how I knew about him in the late 80s, as his first appearance was in a Marvel UK Transformers comic. But somehow I did know about him, and was fascinated by the robot bounty hunter. Perhaps it's because his design looked like something that us 80s kids would have sketched on the brown paper bag covers of our textbooks. Sometimes you just know cool when you see it, and Death's Head here is definitely cool. Oh, I was so psyched when I was in the line at San Diego to pick this guy up. I just absolutely couldn't wait. And even though I don't have that big of a history with the character, I was kind of always aware of him. And just when you get a look at this guy, you're just like, yeah, that's just like a total comic book character that I want to see. And they didn't spare with the details. Even though this is an exclusive, and exclusives tend to have a ton of reuse, there's a lot of brand new parts here. I love how the shoulder pads come around and you can see the individual bullet holes that are in there. That is so cool. These discs and the way this flap comes down and really kind of creates the look across his hips, so cool. And this cape has terrific texture. So even though this is a relatively firm plastic, because of this grid pattern, it really does look like cloth. And of course, the tear marks down at the bottom and the ragged edge give it that much more of a look. But man, come on. It's this head sculpt. It's these crazy fangs, those demonic eyes, those pointy horns coming out. I mean, this dude just absolutely kills. You combine that with, once again, the ability to store all of his weapons and accessories right here on his back. And I mean, this is just an ultimate winner. You know, there's nothing wrong with primary colors. And when you've got a combination of red, blue, and yellow, and then you throw in the metallic robotic bounty hunter along with him, this is a great figure. The first of our figures that received a serious Marvel Legends upgrade, Iron Fist, is in the 8th spot. For years, these two have stood side by side representing my Marvel Heroes for Hire. And while we recently got a new Luke Cage, I'm not exactly sure that it's better than this old one just because of how strong that head sculpt is. But even though I thought we might never see another classic Iron Fist, thankfully, I was wrong. And this one actually does top its predecessor. Oh, look at this. Look at the proportions. You know, gone are those crazy hips and those nutso ball shoulders. In its place are terrific butterfly joints. We still have the big swooping kind of cowl coming up around his head. I love that we got multiple head sculpts, including this sort of action one with the wrap of his bandana flying around, as well as right here at his waist. He does have the proper booties, and he came with a ton of different accessories. I mean, obviously one of the most important ones is that you can recreate the Iron Fist very easily by putting this right on the fisted hand. And so here you can see Danny focuses all of his chi into creating the Iron Fist. But thanks to that Shang-Chi figure that we got a couple of years ago, there are all kinds of different karate hands that go along with this figure. Now, believe it or not, I am actually a little too young to remember the kung fu karate phase of the 1970s. And so when I was reading comic books in the early to middle 80s, Iron Fist and Power Man had their own book. They had a combined book together, and it had already kind of started to slip down the sales chart. So the first thing that I remember were these great full-page ads in Marvel Comics where Iron Fist and Luke Cage were like asking you to buy their book or it might get canceled. And, you know, they're drawn by the incomparable Bill Sienkiewicz, and it just had a huge impact on me. And so I actually did. I went out to the newsstand, to the garden spot in Taylor, South Carolina, and picked up a copy of Power Man and Iron Fist, and I've really loved both characters ever since. So to actually get to see a fully formed, a fully realized Iron Fist, exactly the way that he looked, leaping off the comic page with that John Byrne type of art to his bandana. Oh, it's an absolute dream come true. He could easily be higher up the list just based on sentimental value alone, but that shows you just how strong this year's Marvel Legends were. Hey, if you're enjoying this intersection of comics, history, and action figures, give the video a like. And I need your help. I am so close to a major milestone. So subscribe to Carbon Scoring, because we're bringing you content like this every week. The Kung Fu martial arts action continues in the 7th slot with Wong. While you may think that we're returning to the Kung Fu 70s with this Wong figure, you would be wrong, because Wong has been around in the Marvel comic universe for a long time, making his first appearance all the way back in Strange Tales 110 in 1963. He actually appeared in the same issue that Doctor Strange did. And yes, while initially he was just kind of Doctor Strange's servant, over the years his backstory has really been filled in. And it turns out that he is also a master martial artist from Kunlun, the place where the Iron Fist is from. And so he is now not just Doctor Strange's loyal servant and best friend, but in many ways his equal. And that is why I think that this is such a crucial addition to our Marvel Legends collections. You know, these are the ones that having been collecting this line for over 20 years now, I get the most excited about figures that we haven't seen yet. And this is one that really fills in a gap and allows us to kind of, when you add him in with Clea, you're starting to build up an actual kind of Doctor Strange area. You know, you've got Dormammu. We really need a classic comic Baron Mordo. And now you're talking about a real display for Doctor Strange, one of the foundational members of the Marvel Universe and a creation of Steve Ditko. So you know that I'm going to be all about that. Wong comes with all of the different kung fu and judo hands, as well as some new ones that we haven't seen before. Plus, he has two of these fantastic spell casting hands that just pop right on. Just such a great look. He's got perfect bend, so you can see that you can get him into all of the different martial arts poses, but he also has that just serenity to his head sculpt. This is exactly what I was looking for with a comic Wong figure, and I am so glad that the Doctor Strange side of the Marvel Universe is getting some love. Flying into the 6th spot, the wondrous Wasp. It's only fitting that Marvel's premier fashion designer, Janet Van Dyne, has had more costumes than anyone else in the history of the Marvel Universe. And thankfully, the various Marvel Legends lines have provided us with a number of her distinctive looks. But until now, the only time that we had seen her in her original outfit was in the Toy Biz 5-inch Avengers box set. But thankfully, that has been corrected with this gorgeous figure that came in the 2-pack with Hank Pym in his Giant Man lab coat. And let me tell you, this thing was worth the wait. Hasbro has really figured out the female body over the last couple of years. I think it really started with that Target exclusive Black Widow figure when we were seeing pinless frames across them. But what they've created is a feminine yet sturdy body where the joints are all there and you can get great motion, but it doesn't mess up the lines of the sculpt. And when you add that to the new inkjet face print technology, you get such a gorgeous figure. I mean, I think we can all think back to some of the earlier figures, the original Scarlet Witch, just how heinous the female figures looked. Now, they're actually lovely. And this Wasp figure just brings all of that kind of 60s goodness with her skirt and her little, shoulder pads. But then look at that head with that giant kind of almost beehive type of top with its pointy head and the antennas, and it even has the microphone coming around so that I guess she can communicate with Hank and with her wasps. These wings have like a pearlescent look to them, and you can see how they change in the light, but because they're articulated in every way, you can really get them into all kinds of different poses. They go all the way back. She did come with an alternate unmasked head sculpt, and that's the one that I'm actually using in my Avengers display. But for our purposes, it's this original look that I think really is the tops. What a great, great figure. And let me tell you, I think she may go well with somebody who's going to show up a little further down this list. Coming in at number 5, an original X-Man, Angel. Angel is yet another figure, just like Iron Fist, that we had a great version of in the Toy Biz Marvel Legends line, but have been woefully lacking ever since. But just exactly like Iron Fist, this one is worth the wait. Oh, I mean, look at the detail of these wings. I love that it's like triple articulated, so you can get him where it really comes and folds down quite nicely if you want to have him in more of a standing pose. But when you pull them all the way out, that is a very impressive wingspan. And you can see they're on like a ball joint here in the back, so you can get a ton of movement, but each individual feather is nicely sculpted. And there's just a touch of paint app to give it a little bit of life and just give it a little bit of texture there. But where I think this figure is such a winner is with the personality on this face. It's got a great frame. It's a great kind of generic body frame that really fits Angel. He's not too big. He's not too small. But they get kind of the joy of Warren Worthington in this face sculpt. I think that's just so awesome. And I've said it before. I had complained for a little while that I felt like that the Marvel Legends faces were just too generic. They just were kind of standing there doing nothing. But here lately, they've really brought back much more personality to them, and I'm thankful for that because this really just makes your display. And honestly, this was the figure that inspired me to redo my entire X-Men display. When this came out, I realized that it was time to start over with my X-Men display, and I'm so thankful that I did. I bet that we will see this in numerous forms. Hopefully, we get a blue version. I would love for this to be something that allows us to get an original X-Men set in their proper, kind of their school matching uniforms. But as it stands, I am definitely flying with the Angel for this figure to make the top 10. We have entered the final four with the Lord of Asgard, the Allfather, Odin. I first saw this guy live in person at the Hasbro Sneak Peek Breakfast at the San Diego Comic-Con, and I knew that this was going to be a centerpiece of my collection. I really like that he doesn't represent one singular artistic style. He's a combination of multiple artists. I can see some Jack Kirby influence in the tunic, and I can see Walt Simonson designs in the knee pads and boots. The amount of sculpted detail is just amazing, with these classic Norse artistic designs on his chest amulet and the representation of the world tree Yggdrasil across his belt. But it's not just his incredible heft that makes this a deluxe figure. There are three different options for his head and helmet. I tend to think of the one with the horns as his battle helmet. I have it paired with his sword. He does have a plain head for those times where he's throwing back some mead in the halls of Valhalla. And my personal favorite is the ceremonial crown, with the looping horns and the golden raven atop. Certainly a figure worthy of the Lord of Asgard. Three separate figures tie for the 3 spot from a little indie film you might have heard of, Deadpool Wolverine. I was really lucky. I got to see Deadpool and Wolverine on premiere night in San Diego with a bunch of other guys from the con. And it was so cool because it was all that anybody was talking about for the rest of the weekend. And of course, it was the hugest smash of the year. And I'm glad that the Marvel Legends team was able to come out with their first, and I do believe the first of many sets of figures based off of this movie. The Deadpool is spot on. I mean, look at this thing. It looks like it stepped directly off of the film set. He's not too like super heroic looking. It looks like a guy in a suit. It doesn't have crazy like hyper muscular proportions. The mask is right on target with great sculpting all the way down to like the mesh that you can see all over his costume. Plenty of accessories. We've got our swords. He came with guns. You think he came with extra hands, but really great figure. But we've gotten Deadpool. We've had a movie Deadpool before. I think the one that we were the most excited about was seeing Wolverine in the tights. And yes, I know he did not ever have on the mask and the sleeves at the same time, but that doesn't bother me. This is Wolverine in his tiger stripe suit in a very appropriate, they've got the tiger stripes, but they're not like totally overdone there. But that mask is just so comic accurate. It's a good Hugh Jackman kind of chin underneath there. Great movie claws. These figures have good bend. Again, I think they're on a really terrific frame. You can get them into all kinds of poses. But, let's don't stop there. This movie had about a bazillion cameos in it. And like I said, I think we're going to see a ton more figures from it. But the first that we got was Headpool. And I love this. He's got his propeller. He's got his like old school leather helmet and his tattered mask up over that skull. That's so great. Now, Headpool was the featured figure in his pack, but he did come with a pretty decent accessory, that being civilian Wolverine. So a little bit of a joke, a little bit of kind of what you would expect from a Deadpool movie. We kind of crossed that over with the figures. Look at how incredible this inkjet head for Hugh Jackman is. I mean, just great. He looks a little bit older. Like, this isn't Hugh Jackman from the first couple of X-Men movies. This is a slightly older one. All of this detail on his shirt, on his jacket. He's even got his gloves coming out of his pocket. Great claws. I mean, great Hugh Jackman those chunkier, thicker movie claws that are just coming right. Oh, I'm missing one. I got to find that one. That are just coming right out of the ends of his hands. So good. But for my money, you got to go with our two main stars of the movie of the year, Deadpool and Wolverine. I've only been waiting 40 years for this. Finally, a Beyonder figure. This figure would make the top 10 list based off of this card back alone. Just look at the back of it with the little bio and kind of the 80s picture. Nothing is better than this 1980s cross sell with the figures and their different accessories. And you get the instructions on how to use the shield. It is so good. I had the opportunity to talk with Ryan from the Hasbro team out in San Diego, and they had announced a ton of figures, but there had already been leaks that a Secret Wars wave was coming. And so I asked him, I was like, Secret Wars' 40th anniversary is this year. And he said, totally dead faced, did not give away anything. He said, well, the year's not over yet. And so then I said, well, I'm going to push this a little bit. And I said, the Secret Wars logo and this design, obviously it was originally produced by Mattel and not Hasbro. Is that something that was still owned by Mattel, or could you use it? And he said, yeah, it wasn't proprietary. And I'm like, all right, well, let's see what we can ask. So then I finally said, does lenticular technology still exist? And that was when I finally got him to crack a smile, and he said, it does. So I've been sitting on that for 6 months. I can't wait to crack this thing open and take a look at it. Let's go. Yeah, I know. Technically, this Beyonder figure is from Secret Wars 2 because he really only appeared as like a beam of light in the first miniseries, but I don't care. Now, one thing we did get from the first miniseries is this replica of Battle World. The Beyonder brought pieces of planets from all across the universe together to create Battle World for the Secret Wars. And I love how it's all like coming together. The molten lava at the center of the planet. Here's like a green area. Here are cities and mountains. Here's more of a desert landscape. They put so much effort into this tiny little accessory. Just really great. But this is our true Secret Wars 40th anniversary, whereas this guy is kind of our personification of the Beyonder as he appeared in Secret Wars 2. And let me tell you, it hits all of the highlights that I was looking for. Jerry curled hair, check. Open vest like Elvis, check. Puffy sleeves, check. We've got it all. And it's interesting, if you remember the original Secret Wars figures, they all came with shields, but the good guys had round shields and the bad guys had square shields. So the boys at Hasbro have decided that the Beyonder was, in fact, a bad guy because he comes with the bad guy shield. But look, you can see the Beyonder as his light-powered being versus here he is in his more human form. I have wanted this figure for almost 40 years, and to actually see it and to see it done so well and so perfectly is like a dream come true. There is only one figure that could take the top spot, the HasLab Giant Man. Oh yeah, you knew that the big guy would have to be the one to occupy the top spot. While I still prefer the scale of my old Toy Biz Giant Man for my Avengers shelf display, it is undeniable that the epic scale of this thing is just truly bananas. The fact that they were able to make a figure this large, but still maintain the heroic proportions is astounding. And when you have one up close, you can see all the tiny sculpted detail. Detail that is really able to be brought about due to this scale. Subtle things, like the graded paint wash on his belt, or the hem of his boots and gloves really stand out. Giant Man came with 4 heads, the standard stern heroic face, the happy-go-lucky smiling face, and the attacking face, seen here coming over the top of a building going after Ultron. There was also a zombie head, but I doubt I'll use it. It's not a perfect figure. Many people have had problems with theirs having been shipped with side eyes, and the hands and fingers on mine are a total pain to move and pose. But overall, this is an epic figure in a grand scale that truly represents the greatest this founding Avenger could achieve. Which of your favorite Marvel Legends figures did I leave out? And where was I right and wrong on this list? I want to hear it. You can check out my top 10 Spidey figures for 2024 right here. And as always, for the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.